At Sierra, discover top workout gear at incredible prices, which might lead to another discovery. Your headphones haven't been connected this whole time. Awkward. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
Hey there, travelers. Kaylee Cuoco here. Sorry to interrupt your music, great artist BT Dubs, but wouldn't you rather be there to hear it live? With Priceline, you can get out of your dreams and into your dream concert. They've got millions of travel deals to get you to that festival, gig, rave, sound bath, or sonic experience you've been dreaming of. Download the Priceline app today, and you can save up to 60% off hotels and up to 50% off flights. So don't just dream about that trip. Book it with Priceline.
Go to your happy price, Priceline.
Hey, I'm Candice Lim.
And I'm Kate Lindsay, and you're listening to ICYMI,
In case you missed it.
Slate's podcast about internet culture.
And Kate, I feel like this weekend was full of news. What was on your radar?
So this was the weekend I actually chose to escape upstate, unplug, read my book, and I wake up on Sunday. I get this text from a friend who was talking about something completely different. She was talking about how, amazing New York City feels when it's summer,
Sure.
like it's depressing, and then you're like, you get your will to live again. But she ended the text with excluding when a boat hits the Brooklyn Bridge. And I said, what?
Mm-hmm.
And then I looked it up, and so there was Mexico's Navy ship. It hit the Brooklyn Bridge. It led to several tragic fatalities. Then there were the inmates who escaped from a New Orleans jail. I missed so much.
Yeah, and then Joe Biden announced he has prostate cancer.
Yeah, someone read that out in the car on the way back. I was like, this is relentless. And then, of course, there's Pope Leo XIV, who took his first ride in the Pope Mobile, which sounds like something stupid we would make up to call something more official. But no, that's what it's called.
Uh-huh.
And he gave his first mass. And do you want to guess who was there?
I mean, obviously his biggest fan and the Grim Reaper, J.D. Vance.
Yeah, they met, they shook hands. JD gave him a Chicago Cubs jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess this is the Catholic Watch Pod, because should we recap this mass?
I mean, absolutely. As someone who is not of the faith, I do want to start off by saying I'm obsessed with the Pope Mobile, okay? Because it looks like the USPS truck, but with the top off, which I truly just respect as one of the pillars of automotive innovation. I want one so bad. If you know a guy who knows a guy with a Pope Mobile, let me know. But what about you? Did you watch the first mass? Did anything stand out to you?
No, I mean, I'm a Presbyterian girly myself. And so, and in the cultural sense. So it's not, front of mind, but I will say just from, seeing it recapped online, a lot of American flags in the crowd. Still a lot of reporters in the Vatican, even 2 weeks after Leo became the Pope. The edits, the fan cams, they're still churning. People are diving into the tweets. And I wonder if it's because Pope Leo is actually the most online pope we've ever had.
And maybe this is about something bigger than Pope Leo, like the rise in Catholicism happening online in 2025. But we wanted to talk to someone who knows this beat way better than us, so let's take a break. When we come back, we're bringing in one of our Slate colleagues, political reporter Molly Olmstead, to break down the first days of our new pope and what he represents as the first and possibly most famous American in the Catholic Church.
Hey there. If you're a regular listener who enjoys ICYMI, it would mean the world if you gave us a 5-star rating or review on Apple or Spotify. Every episode of ICYMI is different, from learning about influencer baby names to taking deep dives into the drama within online fandoms. Sometimes, though, that means our episodes can become parts of those stories, resulting in negative reviews from people who aren't actually listeners. That's why it's so important for the real ICYMI heads to be represented in these ratings. If that's you, it would be great if you could show us some love. All right, back to the episode. This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help you when you need it, so your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
Summer is just around the corner, and the folks at Mint Mobile have a hot take. Getting a summer bod is out, and getting your savings bod is in. This spring and summer, it's time to get skimpy wireless bills and fat wallets. And with premium wireless plans for just $15 a month, you can have both without breaking a sweat or the bank. I love the quality of Mint Mobile's wireless service in comparison to my old provider, and I'm saving so much with Mint Mobile. Say bye-bye to your overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. This year, skip breaking a sweat and breaking the bank. Get your summer savings and shop premium wireless plans at mintmobile.com/ICYMI. That's mintmobile.com/ICYMI. Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month 5GB plan required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customer offer for first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details.
And we're back. Joining us on the show for her very first ICYMI appearance is Slate staff writer Molly Olmstead. Hello, Molly.
Hi.
Oh, Molly, it's so nice to have you. You cover politics, the culture surrounding politics, and today you're on Pope Watch. But before we get into it, we have to ask you the question we ask all first-time guests, which is, what is your first internet memory?
Okay, I really struggled with this because I think I have some sort of amnesia for my early internet days. Because basically everything I remember is like CD-ROM based, which is not the internet.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to say I don't feel confident in this chronologically, but what really sticks out to me is AIM chatting.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Classic.
Yeah. Like I just feel like there were emotions that brought out in me in such an intensity that I cannot, as a full-blown adult, access anymore. And I think that's special.
Yeah, wait, what? I want to hear about these CD-ROMs. What was happening with those?
You know, like, did you guys ever play Math Blaster?
Not that specifically, but I know the genre of CD computer games you're talking about, like the educational ones. And yeah, I was like, I had all of them. I feel like there were some that were like targeted for each grade, and I did pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they just like, there was some way, that thing that like tapped into that child brain that made you think you were cheating, but like in the most glorious way. And it was just like a joy that I just like can't imagine anything capturing again.
I know. There must be educational like Roblox or something. Like there's got to be an equivalent for today to those. But putting the CD-ROMs aside for a moment, today we were actually talking about the mass, which is a pun, of people online who are internet stalking and stanning the Pope. So Molly, you cover the conservative movement in America, and this is one of those stories that kind of breaches American politics. Pope Leo is a worldwide figure. Like even people who I didn't think of as staunchly religious are all over Twitter memeing this man.
And the fever probably started with Conclave, not the cardinal meeting that happened 2 weeks ago, but the movie starring Ralph Fiennes. And I have to ask, Molly, did you watch Conclave the movie? Did you like Conclave the movie?
I adored Conclave the movie. I saw it multiple times. Yeah. It was everything I wanted from a Pope movie because it had just the right amount of drama, and it was ridiculous in all the best ways.
Yeah, and then I kind of heard from a little bird, did you like host conclave parties?
I did host 2 conclave parties.
And talk about it?
The more slightly deranged one was a conclave that I personally held for all of the people who were celebrating one of my very best friends at a bachelorette party.
Good.
So, you know, the classic bachelorette party activity, host your own conclave, shut all your friends in a room and make them pick a pope.
Yeah. Oh my God. Wait, who was the bride, the Pope, or no?
No, I miscalculated. I tried to rig it and I got it wrong.
Oh my God, Conclave 2. But I would say maybe that conclave enthusiasm, because that movie, to probably all the people behind its surprise, was heavily memed, became kind of just this internet thing. And I feel like that meme enthusiasm for all things Pope has carried over to Pope Leo. So what are some of your favorite online reactions that you've seen to sort of this new era of the popedom?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Leo is he was sort of technically one of the more boring candidates, which means that he didn't have as much material for like fan cams, which some of the other cardinals got. But no one was expecting an American pope, or at least no one I talked to. So I think all of the most delightful elements of this whole thing has come from people who were not at all prepared for this, who basically had not been tapped in, but were suddenly like, hot dogs? More?
Right.
And so every single thing that I have loved most about this has been something that I can't quite personally understand, being someone not from Chicago myself. I like really personally love and feel grateful that the Chicagoans have their moment to just trot out their best material, you know? Like if you have been saving a joke up about a Chicago man, like this is the time.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I saw things, verified or not, people who say they used to know him or that their parents knew him. It's such a weird level of connection that I think we don't normally have with a figure that's kind of supposed to be somewhat godly and removed.
It's Bob Primos. It's literally Bob Primos. Yes. It's literally Bob. Mom's situationship is the Pope of the Catholic Church. Oh my God. My mom hooked up with the Pope.
But there's more than just his Americanism that sets him apart. He is also, and this is, I guess, a relative term, but one of our most online popes. So let's hear this clip of an interview with his brother.
And you said you spoke to him right before conclave? Mm-hmm. Tell me what that conversation was like.
Really? First we do Wordle, because this is a regular thing, okay? Then we do Words with Friends. It's something to keep his mind off life in the real world.
Words with Friends is a deep cut. I played that in college.
My mom still plays, and I asked her if there was theoretically any possibility that she had played this Pope. And she was like, yeah, technically.
Technically, yeah, because it's like random, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And some would say an act of God.
Yeah, I think his just like online presence, which honestly sometimes seem a little offline, is like so funny. I mean, he also had a Twitter. I say had because it has now been deleted, and now he tweets as @Pontifex. But before, when his tweets were coming off Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost, before they were deleted, the cut took note of some notable tweets of his. I'm going to read some. First, in one recent post, he retweeted a story about the Trump administration mistakenly deporting Kilmar Abrego Garcia to El Salvador, asking whether the president's conscience was disturbed. Then he linked to a National Catholic Reporter critique of J.D. Vance's America First interpretation of Christian love. 3 of his 5 recent posts addressed American immigration policy as they relate to the gospel. He also posted outrage after the murder of George Floyd, and he boosted support for vaccine access during the height of the pandemic.
Which is a lot, but it's also not a lot in the grand scheme of like someone's entire online footprint. But I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg of the sleuthing that people are now doing into this man. Molly, you spoke a little bit about this. What is it that people are doing in terms of like internet digging or even just like general Easter egg digging when it comes to this Pope online?
Yeah, what's really kind of fun to watch happen on the internet is you're seeing a lot of people who are taking this very sort of cautious, boomer-esque approach to the internet. So watching this man who does not have that much of a digital footprint, and he's taking sort of his first early steps of the papacy and trying to figure out sort of who he is going to be in the public eye. He hasn't really done much, really, except being like, war is bad and let's all get along. Pretty standard papal stuff. What we do have is people looking for signs in every single thing he has done or said in this like extremely ridiculous way. Like I remember seeing people get really worked up about a staff he was using at some point and being like, that staff means that this man is gonna be conservative. And it's
God.
It's like, you don't know that. Like, that's ridiculous.
This is how people would watch like Severance. They would find like little names and stuff in the background and be like, oh, this is a clue. And sometimes it's just a background setting. Sometimes it's just a staff.
Exactly. I mean, he chose his name for some sort of like message reason, but he's just like, I kind of like this other Pope Leo. And everyone has looked at everything that previous Pope has done to be like, this affirms my own political beliefs.
Right, of course.
So they're just sort of projecting themselves. But it's just incredible to watch them scour it in the age of AI when lots of people are also just putting out like totally fabricated stuff. Like there's a million fake quotes out there attributed to him.
Oh my God, yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're treating him like this celebrity that has dropped all these clues that is specifically for whatever their subculture is basically within the Catholic Church. And then they're like creating their own version of who the Pope is. It's very funny.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he is definitely a very specific type of celebrity because, conclaves date back to the 1200s and up until Pope John Paul I in 1978, popes were crowned in coronations. And the internet is just an additional way of expressing that excitement. Is this always how people reacted to a new pope, Molly?
I've been really trying to think back to 2013. Unfortunately, I was significantly less online then.
Yeah.
So I personally can't remember if this is how people were with Pope Francis. Mm-hmm. But I gotta think, we are in the full bloom of the social media era. Like, this has to be different. I cannot think people were making fan cam videos of the earlier cardinals. So I think this is a new step for Vatican politics. And sort of looking at this, they're always like, celibate old white men for the most part, and then being like, yes.
Yeah, I feel like the concept of like ironically standing is like kind of recent, which I feel like is what's happening with the Pope because we're like kind of acting like he's Charlie XCX, but he's a Pope. And I mean, what's also funny about this to me is that, in the past, the role of the Pope was much more instrumental in like how countries operated. And, I've been watching the adaptation of Hilary Mantel's Wolf Hall. And so that whole plot is about Henry VIII. He wants to get a divorce so he can boink Anne Boleyn, but then the Pope said no. And so it's like entire countries were dictated sometimes by this theology. But now we have, for the most part, separation of church and state. So like, why, in your view, Molly, is there still this much celebration and interest in the Pope?
I mean, I do think, one, there's so much pageantry involved that's inherently fun. I mean, think about the Met Gala Heavenly Bodies. Like, that was just like, a lot of people would argue that's one of the best Met Gala themes ever. There's just like the secrecy and the ritual. It's so fun. And it's also so much lower stakes for non-practicing Catholics. Like, if you think about how stressful it is to meme actual politicians who could, turn around and suddenly support, a cause that you absolutely abhor in a way that actually has ramifications for your country. Like, the stakes are low for, my Jewish friends who are super into Vatican politics, Like, this is something where it's like you just get to have fun with an election in a way that is simply not going to affect your real life unless, again, you are a practicing Catholic. And for those who are, Catholics who have been sort of culturally aware in the last, few years, we've mostly seen a Pope who's kind of like just a tiny bit sassy against the Trump administration, which I think, has been fun in that it is a little bit like sort of comically understated, but in a way that like everyone can kind of say is like, this is objectively pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. And another reason it seems like the Pope is all over our screens more than ever before is because in some groups it's becoming trendy to be Catholic, and I want to know who's jumping on that trend, but first let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about how recent converts are creating a new Catholic culture that not all Catholics are happy about.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today? Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices, and that's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies, so you can save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states and situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. From streaming to shopping, Prime helps you get more out of your passions. So whether you're a fan of true crime or prefer a nail-biting novel from time to time, with services like Prime Video, Amazon Music, and fast free delivery, Prime makes it easy to get more out of whatever you're into or getting into. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to learn more.
Oh, ICYMI listeners, do I have a scoop for you? So what is it, you ask? It's that Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. Now, before anyone goes suggesting that this is just a rumor, know that there's actual proof that this kettle of tea is not only piping hot, but 100% true. So, yeah, sometimes it pays to be a little nosy, but it always pays to discover. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report, learn more at discover.com/creditcard.
These converts join the faith and then they start covering their hair the way people did in the 1930s. I don't know one person growing up that covered their hair because women's hair was somehow offensive to God. Like, none of us grew up learning that stuff. That is from 2 generations ago. My grandmother never covered her hair in church. It's a style that they're looking for. And that's why they're so infuriating. They join our church and then they try to make it more inhumane.
So that clip is from a longer video by a creator named Julie, and she's talking about this rising tension between, quote, cradle Catholics, or people who grew up Catholic, and this newer wave of Catholic converts. So first things first, Molly, who are the people in this new wave of Catholicism?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to tell how much this group of people that are really sort of becoming visible in this traditionalist way are more just sort of culturally visible on social media, or if they're really filling the pews. But it does seem like we have had a somewhat significant uptick of people who are being drawn to Catholicism for the aesthetics. And so you have a group it's mostly interested in the aesthetic part of it. There seems to be a social media element of it. There's a lot of sort of, or at least there were people on TikTok who were talking about sort of the traditionalist Catholic sort of looks that you can have, the clothes and all that.
Let's talk about the beautiful tradition of Catholic veiling. Veiling has deep historical and biblical origins. If we look back at ancient Jewish culture, women often wore veils as a sign of modesty and reverence in the presence of God. This culture and tradition has carried over into the very early stages of early Christianity all the way until today.
That's harmless and fun. You have people who are really just sort of drawn to the countercultural element of that. But then you do also have a significant number of people who seem to be drawn to this traditionalist version of Catholicism. Often they are converts. And that can be a little bit more worrying because you do have people who really want this sort of pre-industrial age vision of society that is really into traditional gender roles, you know, everyone having like 8 kids, which is fine. But then there's also a definite political element, which involves sort of thinking that Western civilization is the best civilization. So there is like, they're really into the Crusades and thinking, we should only learn like Western classics and things. And it's white supremacist really is what it is. But it's quite ugly and it tends to be anti-Semitic. And I'm not saying that's all of these people that are being drawn in, but I am saying that's a significant sort of element of the subculture that overlaps with the manosphere in some elements, because there's this very like men should be men kind of part of it. And it definitely overlaps with like ugly sort of right-wing corners of the internet. But then you have lots of people who will just say, no, we just really like old forms of worship. We like, the traditional Latin mass. And that can sometimes hide uglier elements within that community. So it's tricky, but very often we're seeing a lot of sort of people coming in, converting, who are in the like right-wing podcast space. I mean, if I'm thinking about some of the people we've seen who've converted, I mean, the obvious person here is J.D. Vance, because, this is a man who was drawn to Catholicism not for anyone in his life who was Catholic, which is how most people, end up Catholic. I mean, I was born Catholic. That's sort of my understanding of how everyone ends up in Catholicism. But then you have people who are like, no, we really love these like medieval scholars and things, and that draws them in. And that's just a whole different starting point for coming to a religion.
Yeah, these people sound like actually what they want to do is go to medieval times or
Yes.
the Renaissance fair. Like maybe that would scratch that itch instead of whatever's happening now.
Yeah. Oh, this is just so interesting because I wonder if any of these are influencing like changes in the overall U.S. Catholic demographic. Jasmine Cho, who came from NBC News, wrote a piece analyzing data from the U.S. Religion Census and the U.S. Census Bureau that said, while Catholicism is actually declining in previously Catholic strongholds, Northeast, Midwest, across the South and West, the Catholic population grew by 6 million. This is from 2010 to 2020. And so if Catholicism continues to shift that way, how might we see its culture keep changing, Molly?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really actually difficult question because there's a lot of people who will make the argument that traditionalism is bringing young people in, when in fact it seems like there's just a lot of demographic trends that are happening independently of these sort of traditionalist elements. And so, you talk about, for example, all the young Catholic priests who are coming up are all pretty traditionalist. I mean, not all of them, but they're increasingly conservative. Every new cohort of Catholic priests is more conservative than the previous one. And people will say that's, they're drawn to this traditionalism. It's, they're finding it so beautiful, when there's just like a lot of factors that make that the case, that are demographic. And it's the same thing with young people. We don't know why exactly this is happening, but it does seem that overall there seems to be something of a cultural shift as specifically white Americans are trending more conservative. So you're seeing a little bit more of like a racial disparity that's popping up because you're not seeing this quite as much with Hispanic Catholics. But among white Catholics, you're definitely seeing it growing increasingly conservative. And so, what I'm wondering is what this is going to mean. It's probably going to mean that the American Catholic Church isn't going to continue to be at odds with the larger Catholic Church, with the Vatican, which is what we saw during the years with Pope Francis, which, led to a lot of angst.
One of the things you mentioned that I think is an interesting distinction to make here is there's like the rise of Catholicism as like a theology and a religious practice and like going to mass versus this sort of online aesthetic that is, trendy. I'm thinking of the hosts of podcasts like Red Scare. They've gotten very Catholic-y, but I would say that seems much more vibes-based than it does theological. And so, are there any other sort of online Catholic figures who come to mind when we're thinking about this sort of new either aesthetic era or this more conservative era?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Red Scare girls are definitely the key in the just like purely sort of edgy aesthetic space because they're the coolest, I guess. You have a lot of like sort of fuddy-duddy types like Steve Bannon, who are definitely not influencing cool young people. But Steve Bannon has been, really active in right-wing Catholic social media spaces. You have Kansas City Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker, who you guys might remember gave that really like sort of offensive commencement speech that everyone got upset about for a while.
I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. How many of you are sitting here now, about to cross this stage, and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world.
Oh, the big convert, I should mention, is Candace Owens. She I think really, I mean, I'm not one to say why anyone converts to a religion, but I think there is sort of she likes to be provocative, and I think she sees this as like another way to do that.
Yeah, and it's part of the ways that this conservative environment is just becoming a bit more mainstream, because I'm thinking of things like, I don't know if you've seen the Hallow app, but it's this app that's kind of like Calm but for prayer, and it's based in Catholicism, and the people who are interrupting my YouTube videos and my Instagram reels to tell me about it are people like Gwen Stefani and Chris Pratt, and they're doing these ads and being very, very openly Catholic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and obviously religion, inherently not a bad thing, but I don't think it's a coincidence that we're seeing Catholicism rise during this current political era, because it's traditionally a more socially conservative religion that dictates things to its core. Things like same-sex marriage should not be recognized, abortion is murder, contraception is sinful, so is sex before marriage. Like, these are the things like they kind of teach and want to like push on.
And here's actually a question I have for you, Molly, because this is interesting. Why do you think it's Catholicism that people are flocking to and not something like evangelicalism, which shares pretty much most of these values? And I feel like evangelical megachurch, that was an era, but now I feel like we're in our Catholic era. But why?
I think Catholicism, well, there's one thing that it gets to do pretty differently from evangelicalism, which is you can say that there is sort of this historical authority to Catholicism because it technically traces back to the first church. Like, this is OG Christianity. And so sometimes I think in a space where you have people who want to be like, I can definitively say that gay people are bad, and I have the authority of thousands of years here. Like, that is something that I think works a lot better than just being like, I have a Bible and this is my read of it, right? But then you also have this we have this moment in conservative culture that is really flirting with elements of the new right that are sort of fascist. And so we're talking about things that skirt around sort of monarchical issues. And the Vatican is and always has been an absolute monarchy. There's nothing democratic about it. You have one man at the top who's just telling everyone else what to do. And I think for people who long for this quote unquote simple time where, there were straight rules about what there can be and what there can't be, I think there's something quite appealing to a lot of these men about being like, yes, like, we live in this simple structure. No need to mess around with elections. I mean, apart from the conclave, but again, that's only like a small number of 70-something-year-old men. You can't be over 80 and vote. But it's just like, it's that, but then it's also the sort of really medieval Western civilization version of the cultural elements, the idea that, we are tapping into this like sort of ancient culture that allows us to be proud of ourselves as white people. And I do think this is a white project, really. This is an element of, white men get to have the thing we could be proud of. And so I think this overlaps pretty heavily with the sort of more authoritarian elements of the right now.
Yeah. I feel like the word subversive that you've been using is also probably part of it, because at a certain point, it's like evangelicalism, been there, done that. Like, we've heard about it. It's not necessarily novel for a right-wing politician to come from that faith. But it is interesting that in terms of Christianity, it's always either evangelical or Catholic, and I feel like it's, nothing in between. And speaking of sort of going back to our roots, going back in time, I feel like just once I'd like to see the headline, the trendy religion that the kids can't stop talking about, Quakerism.
Like the oatmeal.
But maybe that's for a different era of politics.
You're right.
Hopefully one soon.
Maybe we just need to get them wearing better clothes. Like, I think this is the other element that we are forgetting here, is that Catholics just have the best fashion.
Right.
Say that. Okay, that's the show. We'll be back in your feed on Saturday, so definitely subscribe. That way, you never miss an episode. Leave us a rating and a review on Apple or Spotify, and tell your friends about us. You can follow us on Twitter at ICYMI_pod, and you can always drop us a note at ICYMI@slate.com.
ICYMI is produced by Vic Whitley-Berry, Candice Lim, and me, Kate Lindsay. Daisy Rosario is our senior supervising producer, and Hillary Fry is Slate's editor-in-chief. See you online.
Or at Pope Leo's next Mass.